All right. Well, we're going to kick things off. We're waiting for individuals to join as we get going here, but where we have limited time, we're going to get things going and start talking about this wonderful idea of utilizing artificial intelligence for strategic planning. And the reason that I wanted to put this together was my background in business strategy over the last few years and been doing consulting for companies on how to put together overall marketing planning initiatives. How do we set valuable goals and targets, do market research? How do we bring in our employee sentiment? How do we do all these things? And it's become very overwhelming. It's why individuals needed to have like a guided consultancy to be able to do this. And now with the introduction of AI these last few years, what I've been seeing is the opportunity to streamline the strategic planning process and also be able to do this more frequently and faster. I think that's one thing that I've found that is the biggest opportunity is the frequency and also the need. And I'm excited to be able to welcome Tyler Small. We've been having a lot of conversations in this space. We actually got introduced at Utah Valley University as he was doing some consulting with them on their new AI initiatives for developing curriculum, and have had some great conversations. I'm like, we need to be bringing this to a larger audience, right? To be able to share like our conversations. I'm like, these need to be had at a broader level. We should be doing this more frequently. And so we're starting this webinar series that we're going to talk through today, and really just make this more of a discussion. I don't want it to be like a formal training, but just sharing with everyone our conversations we've been having in this space. I just finished up schooling in AI product design and operations. And really what I was seeing is that there is this holdback. I think that there's this feeling of like, this is some fear, I think, in, privacy. We're going to touch on some of that, as well as how do I really utilize it? And there's so much out here. We're going to try and demystify this AI space for everyone. So welcome, Tyler, and welcome everybody today. We're excited to be having this conversation along with you. So Tyler, you want to do a quick introduction and then we can just dig in from here.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to just write back at you really quick and introduce you a little bit to the audience. So so Trina is very much an executive in the tech space. She's founded companies. She's the executive director of Silicon Slopes. She has co-founded something called Tech Moms, and some of you in the audience might be members of that. But it's a really cool group of hundreds and hundreds of moms who are entering or re-entering the tech space. And she provides a massive amount of resources and structure for that. And then she's the founder and CEO of RizeNext, which is a really cool consulting firm and a kind of a solutions architect in itself. And she gets to a thing and she makes things happen. And so I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Trina, over these last few months. And I remember one time when we were at a meeting with some administrative leaders at Utah Valley University, and we were presenting a bunch of strategy work that we'd been working on for these AI degrees. And who did Barclay Burns, the chief AI innovation officer at UVU, who did he call during that meeting to just get a little bit of industry feedback on the strategy that we were presenting? It was Trina Limpert. So it was really cool to have you on that call for a minute and just to get your kind of knee-jerk reaction. And it was wise and it was helpful and it was valuable. So that was one of the first times that we spoke, but we've spoken many times since then and before then, and it's been great getting to know you. A little bit about myself. So I was kind of jerked into the AI space a couple of years ago, and some of my clients just said, "Hey, will you write me a white paper on how this new technology works, how these underlying algorithms are functioning, or hey, can you help us design this AI product for this private equity fund, and hey, can you help us, advise on this book that we're writing for how to implement AI into the workplace, or hey, can you help us build these AI degrees? So I really just yanked in and have really been loving it, jumped in with both feet, and that is my primary work. So I'm an AI consultant, and I help companies and organizations to adopt AI. I'm really excited to dive into this topic today.
Yay! Let's get moving forward. I'm excited to dig in too.
All right. So on the agenda, so this is not the agenda for today, but the agenda for the series, and we're committed to these 6 topics and these 6 fundamental activities of strategic work, which originated from you, Trina, right? These are what you've been teaching in organizations. You've been teaching executives to do these things for many years. Why AI, how to do the research and setting direction. That's what we'll focus on today. And then next time we'll be defining initiatives, goals, and targets, followed by budgeting, resourcing, communicating, and putting it into action. And I just wanted to
part right there, number 6. That's going to be the big one. We might have to do a whole series just on number 6, but we'll get through these first ones. But yeah, excited just to show the applications and talk about why. I think that's the next and first thing of why we're having this conversation. I think everybody hears AI, but why? Right? Let's figure that next step out.
Yeah. So let's jump in. Oh, here's your slide, Trina.
But I got to pause for a minute with a little bit of like woo woo. So one thing when Tyler and I started talking about this webinar, I think a lot of people are not sure where to start. And so Tyler is offering this week a free 45-minute AI strategy session with him. So for everybody on the call, whether you make it to the end or not, we wanted to make sure you are aware that there is this offer from Tyler. Thank you for being able to do an AI strategy session to be able to just see where your business is at, where your organization, your team, wherever you're doing these strategy sessions. Right now, this time of year is strategy time. How do you leverage AI for your organization? And he's offering a free 45-minute opportunity here. So hit that QR code, book time with him while he's got the time, because I'm going to tell you his schedule is going to fill up fast. So hit that QR code. And then as a bonus, at the end of this session, we're going to be talking about how you can get up to 60% of your corporate training costs to up level your existing workforces in AI. We're going to be talking about that. There's another partnership that we have with the state that is offering a lot of compensation for upskilling your workforces in AI. And I don't think a lot of people know about that. So stay tuned, learn more. Right. And then we'll share more at the end of the presentation. So
that's the best kept secret. And I
don't know why people aren't using it.
Right. I've used this reimbursement before with my company, and it's great. It works, and they're great to work with. Well, more on that later. So here are the 4, really, if you walk away from this, we want you to walk away with 4 things. Why being early to the AI game is critical. That AI can assist with literally every phase of strategic planning, finding the most feasible opportunities quickly. And we're actually going to do a few demos. We're not just going to talk about AI today. We're going to use it, and we're going to show you how to do.
We want you to get in and figure out just some initial takeaways, right? We don't want you to just listen and not have anything. So stay for the hands-on how you do this yourself.
Yes, and that will be really fun. I love getting in the tools. And then finally, the foundational principles of strategy remain basically the same. And as I said, Trina's been teaching these principles, the specific ones that we're going to go over in this series for a long time. And those aren't really going to change. What's going to change is your ability to accelerate the process, to do more research that you wouldn't have been able to do before in less time, and to be able to utilize AI operationally in your business to automate, to decrease cost, to increase sales. And so those are some of the things that you'll learn in this series, and specifically today.
Right. Yes.
So let's jump in. This is a slide that I love to share in the very beginning because it shows the speed, and this is the first answer to the question of why AI? Why are we talking about this now? Why is it just a lot more than just some hype? Why do you need this in your strategic planning process? And so as we go down through these four different phenomena here. The first one being controlled fires. If you think about Homo sapiens, hunter gatherers out there, and when they realized they could cook food with fire and make tools and keep warm in the wintertime and use it to do all kinds of things that improved their quality of life. That was a big thing for them. And still it took, by many estimates, even longer than 100,000 years for that to spread.
We're getting a history lesson today. Like,
Right.
yeah, you got to go back, right?
You got to go all the way back. I'm going all the way back.
Beginning of time.
Right. So that was very much like this big deal for humans. It was like, oh, I can cook food. This is great.
This is great.
And so but that took a long time. Then jumped to Amazon. How long did it take to get to 1 million users? Just over 3 years. And that was really fast. And at the time I was just reading a news article on this yesterday from 1999. And they were like, holy cow, Amazon's blowing up. It's this huge thing. And I remember that, right? When it was like, oh man, like everybody wanted to be Jeff Bezos and he was poor compared to where he's at today.
Yeah.
So, and then Facebook in 10 months. So that everybody was like, holy cow, how can this happen? 10 months. That's like so much faster than even Amazon. And then came along OpenAI and it took 5 days to get to 1 million users.
5 days. I mean, that's the pace of change has never been seen. I mean, I've been in tech for 30 years and I don't think anybody has seen the pace of change and innovation that we're seeing. And I was having a conversation with some classmates, and we were learning about, patents and IP and some of these things. And they're like, it's pointless right now because within 2 months, those patents, it's not that they're no longer valid. It's just that something better has replaced it. And you've spent all this time and expense. Don't worry about the patent, just get it out because your speed to delivery is so incredibly fast that you have to be in. You have to know how to use these in your business. It's not, it's a non-negotiable, right? And I think that's why I felt this sense of urgency to share this today is that I don't think people have that sense of urgency that's needed on the speed of change or recognizing that.
Yeah. And by the way, when Trina talks about her classmates, like this isn't some like book group. It's an MIT group of like COOs from huge companies, and this is the real deal. This program she just did. I'm excited to get. She has so many insights that she'll bring in from it. So I love this slide. I created this slide just to show, and after I created, I was like, wow, this is a big deal. And if you think about what computers needed to come around, they needed city structures, they needed electricity. They needed some manufacturing abilities. There was a lot of infrastructure that relied on that computers relied on in order so that everybody could have one that really wanted one, who was in the working class, and businesses, being able to say, oh, we're going to get a computer and we're going to use it for business. There were a bunch of things that had to happen. And computers had to happen in order for the internet to happen. It was foundational, and the internet was primary to social media, digital social media. And then smartphones were able to take that a step further. And then now we have Wi-Fi and 5G, so that no matter almost wherever you go within a business context, you can get the internet. And of course, you can get satellite or internet outside of that. So underlying all of that is this heavy investment to proliferate mature technologies that really the AI technologies have been developing for decades and decades. And the theory has been developing for more than 100 years. And now we're at this point of fruition where, 4 years ago, if an individual said, hey, I'd like to use AI to be quicker, better at my job, like there weren't really a whole lot of options. But now with generative AI, and so I have that in the title of the slide, Gen AI, all of these components are combining together as foundation for this huge, rapid advance. So this is a slide I put together because all of those things that we've been talking about, the massive speed that's occurring with these AI technologies is causing a huge change. We used to say, oh, an increase in productivity is great because the pie gets bigger and there's more work for everyone, and this is great. But the change that we're seeing starting to occur is that when you have an increase of 1,000-fold in one area of the economy, that's great. People are going to shift over to other jobs. Or when you have an increase of 10% or 20% in across the board, then that's great, and the pie gets a little bigger, and everything's good. But what's a little bit different about this situation is that we're having massive increases in productivity across the board. And so we're kind of crossing this mark where there's been a pretty consistent demand for knowledge work for decades. And now the productivity and capacity increases are outstripping that. And we're seeing this in certain areas. We've seen it in many different industries like agriculture. If you look at agriculture, in 1820, I like my history, right? In 1820, 79% of Americans were in the agriculture industry. We were in the fields. We were doing stuff with plants, right? We were picking cotton, and now like the cotton gin and the spinning jenny and like all these things that have or not the spinning jenny, sorry, that's I think about fabric, but and textiles, but it's down to 2%. We only have 2% of our people working in agriculture, right? And so that's a big change, but it was only in one area. Now we have these massive changes happening in a lot of across the board.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's not like a hidden place to go where you're like, oh, I'll just go over here and AI won't really affect me in this industry.
Well, and I think this is why it's so important to stay on top of the advancements that are happening in AI, because every job is an AI job now. I used to say when we work with our students, every job's a tech job. Every job's an AI job as well. And you have to have an understanding of the capabilities and staying on top of these so that you can be the ones that are quickly shifting and adapting and learning how to learn. And even within the work that I do with my students within the nonprofit space, we're not teaching them a specific technology. We're teaching them to learn how to learn and how to adapt and be curious, and that's what I would say to everybody on the call today and that's watching this is you need to build this new mindset of curiosity and understanding and leaning into this, because nobody has the answer to where's the workforce going to shift right now, because it's moving so fast. It's happening on the fly, and there's not like okay, here's where nobody can predict it right now. So it's why this is going to be a continued conversation, a continued understanding of where the market and trends are going. And as you go into your business strategy, the reason we put this on here is that this is also going to impact your business. I had somebody say to me, I think it was you, Tyler, maybe even in our conversations, that if you're not on the train, you're going to get run over by the train.
That's right. That's right. You got to get off the tracks and get on the train.
Yeah. So if you're on this call, you're getting on the train. That's a good sign. But we want to create that awareness that things are going to be changing drastically for your business, for your role, for your every aspect of your life, and just staying involved and aware is the great first step.
Yeah. And really what you might have noticed if you're listening to this call, you might think, well, AI, it's going a little faster than linear, and that's true. And so I created this graph to show the feasible automation of knowledge work. So I think that there's also, we could draw a similar graph for the feasible automation of physical work. Mm-hmm. It's not quite as steep. Maybe it's as steep, but it's a little bit behind, right? So we're a couple years behind this in at least in the physical work
aspects. I'm going to add something here because this is like a real life example within my family. My husband's the CEO for a autonomous turf harvesting company, right? So they're
Yes.
building ag tech, and they did this post. They had sponsored the PGA Tour, and the PGA Tour posted, and they had like over 5 million views. And guess what? The number one thing that was showing up in the stream, thousands of people concerned about the job loss for the people mowing the golf courses.
Wow.
And it was predominant through, and that's like the number one concern, but not realizing that it's going to give them the capacity to be able to do other things within, manicuring and everything. It's solving one thing, but that it is both the knowledge workers, but also within these businesses, it's not excluding manual labor.
It's true.
And so there is disruption everywhere.
It's true. And what's the name of that company?
Firefly Automatics.
Your husband's company, Firefly Automatics. Go check these things out. They're huge. They're these huge, big lawnmower things, totally autonomous. It is the coolest thing, and it's true. And going back to our agriculture, what we talked about, 79% to 2%. That's largely due to physical processes being automated.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working with a startup that works with they're putting together a company around humanoid robots,
Mm-hmm.
and the the opportunities there are just mind blowing for the number of things that, and if you combine it with the fact that a humanoid robot can get into an Uber and get a ride anywhere across town, like it shows up and knocks on the door, is like, I'm ready to work, like, and then you load in other, you program it to do one thing and you sell that service, and then if it's like, hey, I have 10 minutes before my next appointment, do you want me to do this or this, like, you can load in like potentially an unlimited number of programs in order to have different expertise. So mind blowing. Yeah. So I definitely agree. Like
we could go deep on this, but we're gonna move on to the next thing, because I know this is the fun that Tyler and I have all the time. It's like thinking about all of these disrupted industries and what might happen. And I think it's good for everybody to think about what might be the disruption within their own industry that's happening. Right. It's
exactly.
And how would this apply to what you're doing? And how could you leverage that and take that into your own initiatives and strategies?
Right. And I think that the takeaway from this slide, like just to boil it down into something really concrete, is that there's this 10% per year that's on the table for automation. It's like, if whenever you start, there's this 10% of low hanging fruit that you can use these off the shelf tools. You don't have to hire a machine learning engineer. You can just get a little training, and it's not that expensive, not a huge capital investment. And there's a 10% per year opportunity of just super low hanging fruit right now.
Yeah. And I would say that's where everybody should start, is just upskilling your workforce on understanding Gen AI and how to leverage it within their role. Mm-hmm. Get training, whether it's Tyler or someone to come in and do the upskill training within your teams. That's the first opportunity. And then you can start ideating, which gets into your next phase here of really doing the research, right?
Yeah. So this is one last slide here, I think, on the speed that things are happening. And when you have companies that are able to do 100 or 1,000 times the work that they were able to do before because of AI, then they're able to take market share much faster. And so if you think about the classic product adoption curve, sometimes it's called the technology adoption curve. It starts with the innovators who are building the tools, and the early adopters who are like, hey, that looks great. I'm gonna try that out. It may not be perfect yet. I'm gonna give it a shot. And then the early majority, so this is like 34% of the population, like a whole big chunk of the population who's like, oh, okay, like I see the early adopters having a lot of success, and I'll do that now. The biggest advantage, of course, is to be an early adopter, right? And then the early majority, but essentially these are the latecomers to this game, because I just don't think there's going to be space for the late majority and the laggards. Those who fail to adopt early in this case, I don't think we'll have much of a chance to adopt it all. And so that's why it's exciting. You know, you're listening to this webinar, and you have this opportunity to be in this category here where things are still good.
Yeah.
So, so let's get down into the weeds a little bit. You might have seen a lot of these large language models and said, wow, like how do I use these? Like what's good for which tasks? And so we just have 8 pointers here of little tips and direction for you in order to have some practical sense of what's going on in this world of large language models. The first one is security and privacy. Like you want to pay to lock it down. So some people are like, oh, like ChatGPT, you can't put anything in there. It's impossible to have any kind of security of any sort. And that's not exactly true, right? So Trina and I have gone through and you can, and we'll show you in the demo in a minute, but you can lock it down so that it's not being, your data isn't being used to train the model. And there's other advanced precautions that you can take. But that's like the first easy thing to do is you can pay for ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is, Mistral, and you can pay to lock it down. So it's easy to do. It's like $20 a month to pay for one of these platforms, and then you've got this layer of security.
Yeah, I think that was one thing. I was working with a insurance company, and that was their biggest concern is they're like, we can't adopt AI because it'll learn and we're going to be exposed. If you pay for the, $20 a month and you're using it and the hours that are saved. For example, if I'm scanning a policy, 144-page policy manually to answer a question on if there's a coverage within it, and I can do that in less than 5 seconds in ChatGPT, that's something that the teams would save hundreds of hours a month, right? So that $20 a month is completely worth it. And you say, don't train on the data that you're loading. That's number one. And I think that was their biggest concern is the fear of privacy. And so know that that's an option and can utilize it for just some of these basic ones. When you get into strategy planning and you're researching, I think there's just understanding the markets. You're not loading your data in there to do market research, right? So use it for that. As you put together your strategies, understanding current economics, current market conditions, your competitive landscape, use it for all that research. There's no risk there, right? You're just learning and taking that in as you build out your initiatives.
Exactly. Asking questions. There's the risk of asking a question is very, very low. So some tips on what models are good for what. Overall, Claude Sonnet 3.5, I've seen on many of the tests, the benchmark tests, just tends to be at the top of the stack. Now there's ChatGPT 4.0, which has gotten better and better over time. And these two are just about neck and neck. Some of the features I've seen around ChatGPT have been a little more robust, I think. And so I continue to use this one, but I also use Sonnet 3.5 because especially when I'm needing 2 models. There's also for internet search, Perplexity is a great model, and Perplexity has immediate access to do internet searches. It won't do everything, does have limitations, but if you want to say, hey, what are the top 10 softwares in this area that are competitive for a business like mine for this particular use case, it can get you a beginning list without having to sort through all of the kind of host sites that are like, oh, sign up and pay, give us your email address, and then you can dig through these things. So it's a very quick internet search tool. Then for thinking, OpenAI 01, this model does a lot of processing of results and then summarizes that and basically does analytics on its what they call the first shot responses. So it might create 40 pages of analysis and kind of thinking. And these large language models don't think, but we say that's sort of what it's doing, and it's like what it's doing, I should say. And so that's a really fun model to use when you need deeper analysis. Number 5, uncensored. And sometimes when we think uncensored, we think, oh, like naked people, but that's it's more than just nudity. It's politically, it's the ability to, if you need to create images of a person who exists, then like you can do that with Grok 2 versus a lot of the other models that will create an image for you. They're locked down and they say, oh, well, we're going to protect someone's likeness at all costs.
Mm.
If you want to make a silly card for, for someone at work, and you need, you want to have, somebody who's a famous person doing some silly thing, like you can do that with Grok 2. So, thinking outside of the box in terms of like, oh, like these, if you're trying to do a thing and you can't get a model to do it, then something as silly as that, you could do with Grok 2. But it's also really nice for, I would say, like I mentioned, political things, if it's or anything that where if it's a sensitive area like animal rights or something like that, where you're like, well, we really need the answers to these questions.
True sentiment, right?
Yeah,
We know there's bias out there. Just understanding that luckily they're putting some of that in, but also there's platforms out there that allow you to see true sentiment and kind of where people are at.
Exactly. If you need that information, you're getting locked out, then Grok 2 is good. The fastest processing, this is like probably going to change in some number of months, but as I've done many different experiments, there's Grok with a K there, but the number 6, Grok with a Q, is based on these really fast chips, and it runs several different models, including the Llama series from Meta, but it does it very fast. The token inference speed is like 600 tokens per second. So it's just many times faster. And if you need to plug into a fast model, or you're thinking, man, I need to go through 15 iterations of this question and really see all the output, and I need to do it in a minute, then you would use Grok 2, and it's really awesome. Number 7, swarms of agents. If you need to hook together a bunch of different models, or ask a question and then have the next step do something else with the response, and then have the next step analyze that, then enhanced AI is a great platform for that.
I think just on this one, a couple of use cases that I've seen that are really applicable to if you're building out your marketing strategies, your marketing process. That's probably one of the biggest opportunities there is you can, and even in your strategy research, if you're pulling in your employee sentiment data, you're pulling in a data source for your client and customer sentiment as you do planning and saying, hey, I'm pulling this initiative together. What would be the response and the sentiment response? Being able to pull multiple data sources and automation flows. This is a great kind of a middleware AI. I would say it's pulling from multiple sources as well as utilizing multiple platforms to be able to come out with the outcome. Really powerful for that. And, like I said, we can't get into all the details here. So follow up with us if you have questions on any of these things. But I think that's one of the most, the greatest opportunities is because you can see all of these different platforms have different use cases where you should use them. It's not a one size fits all. And I think that's the key takeaway on all of these models.
Yeah. Thanks, Trina. So we talk about creativity, and I think there's a term that we need to coin here. We haven't yet done it, but it's this idea that at some point you realize AI is better than you at doing your own job, at least certain parts of it. And for in most areas of work, that hasn't happened yet, right? But at some point you go through this and you're like, oh man, like I can do this better than I can. Like I've been so proud of myself. This is my identity, for years. But at the current moment, AI plus human intelligence plus artificial intelligence is extremely valuable, and the two coupled together, you can often get a lot more done. And that's specifically true right now for putting in the right prompt. Trina, did you want to talk about superminds for a sec?
Yeah. So one of my professors wrote this book, Thomas Malone, and we were talking about, he's at MIT, and we were talking about this idea of superminds. And it's not just with technology. And we had this chart where we were talking about how all the greatest creativity and innovation in the world has been done within a group, right? And what creates a better supermind and collaborative intelligence, if you will, between humans. And once you bring that together and you get the right mix of people, which is a diverse group of individuals, um, then you have a higher level of creativity and innovation and can solve some of these challenges that you can't solve if you don't have like the right mix of people. Well, when you start to compare and you just have, let's just say we put AI on something, what they're seeing is that AI alone is a little bit, has a lot more access to this data to be able to become more creative, right? But what's the most powerful is when you take the human superminds combined with the AI supermind together, it's exponential. And so that's the importance of getting your individuals understanding how to leverage AI and upskilling in that. So when you put these groups of individuals and diverse mindsets and backgrounds and life experience and all of these things together, you get a benefit. But then when you combine that and they understand how to leverage AI and leverage technology to solve the problem, it's just off the charts how much more productivity you get and in creativity.
It's super cool. And um, we were having this conversation while we put this together, and um, I love this book by Ethan Mollick, and it's called Co-Intelligence. He talks about this concept of centaurs and cyborgs. And a cyborg is like, okay, there's the robot over there, and it's kind of gonna do its thing, um, or in terms of like, wait, that's not what a cyborg is it? I'm trying to remember correctly from the book. A cyborg is like the both like,
Both human
right?
and tech, yes.
Yeah. So there was the cyborg, the centaur, and then there was the robot being the third. And so like, am I using AI? So the cyborg, he's described it as, am I using AI like literally like a twin brain thing where we're going back and forth and we're doing this task literally together? Or am I kind of passing chunks on? Like, I'm going to do a part, and the centaur is like, I'm going to do a part, and then it's going to do a part, and then I'm going to do a part, kind of passing back and forth. Or when you just hand it off to the robot and it's doing the whole thing itself. So asking the question of what pieces of this should a human be doing in order to maintain specific points of contact with humans or decrease specific risks. You want to have the human in the loop appropriately. So I didn't describe that as well as I'd hoped, but go read the book. It's great. And he also has, he posted something on X recently. And so I carried this part over. In the future, there will be some times when AI plus data is actually better, even without a human. But here's the caveat to that, is that it generally needs some intentionality. It needs a great prompt.
Guidance. Yeah.
So if we go back to that concept of the superminds, looking at, and especially if you think about, okay, how can we automate this repetitive thing that must be done? Generating the right prompts, using a group of people and the group intelligence to create the right prompts and the right workflows, the right QA processes, like that is still going to be really important for a very long time.
I think when it comes to building your strategy, one of the things that I used to do at companies is and it took a lot of time and effort, right? To be able to gather ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one of the opportunities that I see. That ideation phase from your employees of where are the opportunities within the organization for, going forward. And we would take that into the strategy session. We'd manually go through, we'd do like the wall with the sticky dots, which is the highest priority. And it took time and engagement. And what I see the opportunity now is you can now have an online gathering of this ideation and prioritization, and still have like a engagement, a collaborative engagement, but you still have the hierarchy that the leadership needs to make the decision on what's going to align to the right strategy. But it just simplifies that process so quickly by leveraging these tools to saying, hey, here's the top 5 things that are coming from, your 500 to 2,000 employees. And then it gets them engaged, and there's a lot you can do there for like gamifying it and getting them engaged and getting them on board to driving. Like we were saying, that action part of your strategy is the hardest. So it's just, how do you do that quicker, leveraging some of these capabilities that are available in AI?
Absolutely. And you'll see in this graph, and I don't want this to be misleading, but at first glance you say, oh, okay, there's Bard. And this is from, you can tell it's a year or two old, because Bard was Google's last model, and Gemini is now their current flagship. So they're on Gemini 1.5 now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Bard was back here, and then they tested all these humans, and they tested ChatGPT 4, and they even tested humans plus AI was in the blue there, and they said, if we get the human and and it's facilitated by AI, how does that look? It turns out, in terms of the number of ideas and how creative, how valuable each idea was, ChatGPT 4 was much better than the humans. But that, if we just leave it at that, it's like, oh, wait a minute, what is the message here? I think the critical factor is that in running such a test, they needed to have a prompt. They needed to ask the right questions. And so in such a situation where you have a population of employees and leaders and people who are invested in, you want to invest and engage in this brainstorming process, if they're using these tools and they're putting their minds together and asking the right questions, and then they're curating, grabbing the very best of those ideas and bringing that together, it's asking the right questions. It's knowing the parameters and how to select those. And so by combining those many people who are very good at using AI and figuring out how to make it do the work much faster and better, then that altogether can be much more valuable.
Excellent.
Yeah. So ready for a demo?
Let's do it.
All right. So what we're going to show here is how to create a custom GPT. And you might have wondered, like, oh, what is a custom GPT? You might have created one yourself, and you still may learn a little bit here that we're able to do. And basically, if you think about, there's a lot of different terminology around this. So I want to kind of clarify. A custom GPT, a lot of people would call it an agent, or a lot of people would call it, oh, I'm going to build an AI, or they would say, oh, this is I'm going to have my AI agent do this thing. And you're like, wait, what is this? Is this a humanoid robot, or is this like some completely autonomous like thing that they like talk to, or and there are those that exist right now, but this is just within the OpenAI platform, and we're going to create a specific custom GPT, and we're going to do it really quick using some data that I've created. And the four pieces to this are the data that you upload into it, and you don't necessarily have to upload data, but that's where this becomes extremely useful.
Absolutely.
And you have instructions, a prompt, and a response. So we're going to be putting these two things together in a very systematic way to kind of custom build a little tool here. So now I need to figure out how to share my screen again, right?
Yeah. While you're doing that, I'm going to give an example of how I use this GPT. So I create these all the time for very specific use cases. It's kind of like a specialized AI opportunity. We did a workshop and did a certification for a lot of our students on creating these GPTs, and they were using them for everything, like personal ones, work ones, research ones. It was amazing to see the breadth. One specific one I did was a persuasion coach, and started to use behavioral economics to create marketing that will be able to be more influential. Because you've seen, like, when you do a GPT, just generic one, you have to prompt it to tell it how you want it to respond. And so I created a persuasion coach,
I
and
love it.
I actually shared it with my husband, and his CFO's been using it to do some of their investor relations and stuff like that. So it's fun to kind of pull in and ideas on how do I want to utilize this, and as we share this, you'll have ideas, and think about if you had your employees, right, all knowing how to do this, how much more um, productive and can utilize this in their day to day. So go ahead,
Yeah.
Tyler.
Thank you. And isn't that the truth? So, and I think that the difference between using just the ChatGPT 4.0, for example, or building a custom GPT, for example, is you can see in this conversation that I was having this morning. Um, there's a rain gutter company that I'm working with, and it's not this one, but I grabbed this picture from the internet just to show, like, you can make it tell you the linear feet of rain gutter on a house. So it uses computer vision. But in order to do that, at first it's like, I don't know if I can do that, right? Like I had to kind of walk it through certain steps. But if you wanted to do this really well, you could include some examples and some rules and some assumptions that you can tell it. So where all you'd have to do is upload some pictures of a house, and then it would give you a calculation of the linear feet of rain gutters. So I've done similar things. I haven't done that exact thing for custom GPT, but for today, you can see your custom GPTs end up in this list here. I have a bunch. I've archived some of mine, so you can tell that I use this a lot. You want to click that button, Explore GPTs, and then you can look for other people that have created one. There's more than 1 million creators on here, and they're all free to use after you're paying for that $20 a month plus subscription or an enterprise plan. But you'll click this create in order to make your own. And then we can call this. So I did this for a fictitious company that is, let me see what I called it here. I called it Legal Edge Marketing. So we'll call it the Legal Edge Marketing GPT. And then the description of it is, I'm going to say, knows all about legal edge marketing and is a very highly experienced management consultant. And I often use the management consultant because they're supposed to know a lot of things about business and strategy. And so and they're able to advise in all areas. Telling it what it is very helpful. So I'm going to use Dolly 3 to create an image there, and then act as a strategic advisor. And I'm going to make the instructions here very simple. But what I'm going to do then, there's our, see, this is a marketing company that serves legal firms. Is what I designed here. And so it's got its little, and that's the preview of what it'll look like. So then I'm going to upload some files, and I've prepared these beforehand. So I have a profit and loss statement. I have mission, vision, and values. And that includes, I also put some stories in there about how the values are applied in an exemplary way for the business. I included results from an employee survey, Legal Edge marketing key services. So it describes the key services of the company in detail. And then 3 ideal avatars for marketing purposes. And then the survey responses from clients of the best value points and the least valuable aspects of the company. So all this data. And then I'm uploading this, and that's as easy as it is. When someone says put in the data, they don't mean they don't mean you have to be
upload some files. You don't have to create integrations. I mean, you can go to that scale, right? If you've got a processing engine and you're bringing data in all the time, I mean, you can scale it pretty broad. But like just for simply getting started, this is all you need.
Yes. And yeah, that's all it is. You don't have to be a computer scientist or a software engineer. So I'm going to create this, and
I'm gonna give a gotcha, because if you don't hit create or save, you lose it if you ever
you
step
leave
off.
everything.
I've done it a couple times, so just a little tip and trick there. Make sure you're
Yes.
hitting create and save.
So I'm going to save this. And so anyone who I work with, who I'm like, oh, I want to share this with my colleagues, my my team members, you can share this link. And now I'm going to click view. And so now I can say, I'm just going to test it really quick. What does this company do? So I'm going to make sure that it is reviewing the knowledge set that I uploaded, and it calls it it's knowledge, right? So here it gives the description, key services offered, target audiences. It's just giving me the basics of this company. I'm like, okay, great. That looks like it's reading off of the knowledge exactly what I needed. So what are some strategic questions, Trina, that we should ask our bot here that now knows all the basics about the company?
Yeah. So if I were putting together my strategy, I'd want to know, first of all, what's the competitive landscape, or key competitors, right, in my market. And then you can even do like your SWOT analysis. What are their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? You can, and I think this is where, we talked about at the very beginning, and as we kind of wrap up, recognize the same things that you're doing in your strategies today or have been doing, as you go through your strategic planning. It's just an assistant to do the same steps. The steps don't change. The strategic planning doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
It's just maybe you're getting more data, making better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
what your strategies are. It's your ability to make better decisions and to do it more frequently, and check, your market on a more frequent basis, where it used to be, it took so much effort. You'd only do it once a year. Maybe you're doing this quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and validating your current strategy.
Exactly. And for this exact question, I think that it's important to know that it's searching the web for a lot of this stuff. And you can either turn that off or leave it on to search the web. And if you're like, oh, I just want it to use my analysis of competitors that I've included, then you would want to uncheck that box that says search the web.
Just
so
use your local knowledge that you've
Mhm.
Okay.
Or you could use something like Perplexity here that searches the web. But one thing I want to point out about the results, I wouldn't take these results as the gospel truth, but what I would look at, and you're going to be more of an expert in your realm, right? So if I own this company, Legal Edge Marketing, I would know my space, and what I would do is I would say, oh, Scorpion, yeah, I know them, or oh, I didn't realize we were competing with Scorpion. I need to look more at that, and then I would look at their offerings, for example, and I would say, okay, it looks like they do website design. Like we do that. That's normal. Online advertising, blah, blah, blah. And I might say, oh, reputation management. That's something we've been looking to get into. Maybe that's something I should consider, right?
Right.
So it's looking at it and saying, and it's not necessarily like this 1,000% certainty proven fact that this company does that thing and it is on their top 5 list, but it's like something that you should consider. Like if you were talking to somebody who was like, oh yeah, they're Scorpion and they do this stuff, like that's the kind of weight that you should give it. They could be making it up, but they're most likely mostly accurate. So this is giving a lot of the competitors there in the market. That's pretty awesome. And you can ask it, go into more detail on 6 and 7. Tell me more information about those and how we can compare. Or you could ask a different question. Please give me a SWOT analysis of the company. So I think that's good, because to ask this question second, because what's going to happen is it's going to actually look at some of these at the responses here, and it's going to include that as part of the conversation, assuming that well, we've talked about this, and so it'll give you the response in the context of these other companies. So here we've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and here it keeps going, and threats. One of them is intense competition from established brands.
And so then you can create your differentiation. I think that one other thing that's really exciting is bringing in now questions like, because you uploaded some of the sentiment data, right, from existing customers. What are they saying? Now tying those two things together. Okay, it looks like we want to maybe create an initiative that focuses, like, I can't read it, my glasses aren't showing, but let's say we pick one of those opportunities and we say, how do you think our clients would respond to this? What's the likelihood, or what are the top things considering these opportunities do you think our customers would most likely adopt? Right. So it's allowing you to tie these different data sources together and ask different questions, that as you pull in, maybe even like, how are my employees going to respond to this initiative? If you have your employee data or employee feedback or sentiment of, and how do I now communicate that? Because you're going to use AI to create your content strategy and communication strategy. And it just all starts every step, like we were saying, as you go through building, how do I resource this? Do I have resources? Let me pull in my financial data. It's allowing you to aggregate all of these different insights and data inputs in order to make better decisions and making sure that you're able to execute as you get down the road.
Exactly. And sometimes it misses things, but when it does, I just ask it, like, just as if it was a college intern. I'd say, hey, what do you think about this? Can you, contrast that with these other things? Or what, like Trina said, how would my employees feel about this? And although it has access to that information, it didn't specifically query it. And so, consider, if it's not giving you exactly what you want, just treat it like you would an employee or an intern, and ask again.
Or maybe you need more data, or maybe you don't have the data, and you can adjust there. And one thing that I've done in strategy sessions in the past, it's like, well, we don't have that data. So that goes on our strategy of like, well, how do we get that data for our next planning session? That becomes a project that we're now working on to be able to make sure the next time we do this and we have our planning sessions, I've got the data to now leverage, right? Because you're going to identify those gaps. There's always going to be gaps in what you have available and what you don't. And you can add that into some of the initiatives that you move in going forward.
Yeah. So this is an example of a prompt that's too long. This just basically says, look, walk it through like it's an intern, or use a platform like enhanced AI that you can divide up the steps. So here's some example prompts, and we'll share this with you. Those are the steps we just covered, and here are some wrap up points. You want to take these, Trina?
Yeah. So I know that we went through a lot in an hour. We've got 2 minutes left. So I'm just going to hit on like the key takeaways, and then we'll wrap it up from there. Start with your data-driven insights. Identify those trends. What are the economics? Use it to pull in your market research. What's the political environment that might impact? What are some global news or impacts that might impact your industry? Just think about the different ways that you can pull data in, and then use it to help prioritize those initiatives. Get feedback. Use your customer data, use your employee data, analyze for risk, potential impacts, use that to prioritize, because there's only so many limited resources, right? We can't do everything. So you want to make sure you're doing the right things that are going to move the needle the most. Use goals. Everybody knows about SMART goals, but make sure that you're creating those so you can communicate those and monitor. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities I see with AI, is the ability to do this more frequently and put those operational meetings in place so that you are pulling this in on a regular basis, looking at it. Are we achieving and aligning the teams through those communications? This is a big one of, once you have your plan, a plan is nothing unless it's put into action. And so you need to be able to align your teams, put those communication plans together, put your messaging together, use AI to create that content. Make sure you're hitting the right messages according to what is important to your employees. You're tailoring all of that through AI. And then we're going to get into additional webinars. So hopefully you join us for those, talking about resource planning, budgeting analysis, all of those things to make sure that you're able to deliver and operationalize those teams in AI. I think that's number one takeaway. I would say start upskilling your teams. Get everybody familiar on how to leverage this within their roles. So
yeah, and that brings us to our, our call to action. And that we want to have these conversations with you to help you. And there's, I'll also point out things that you can do on your own, as we're preparing to have future conversations. And but there's a massive amount of impact and value that you can get in your organization from just a tiny little investment. It's just phenomenal in this area what you can do, the bang for the buck that's involved.
Yeah, so I would say get on that calendar. You leverage this; it's free. I'm like, just get some time on the calendar and start having the conversation on how this applies to you. And if you're looking to do upskilling within your organizations, please get a hold of us. We can connect you into being able to get majority of the cost covered and being able to do that. I think there's a huge push and a huge want for organizations to upskill their workforces, and so know that the cost and time investment is going to come back to you tenfold, or if not more. So thank you everybody for joining today. If there's anything we can do, please reach out. We're here.
Thanks.